Hey there, fifth grade. Today we are going to talk about three different things: area, perimeter, and volume. All of these things are ways to measure a shape. And you guys have learned how to measure in the past week or two. So if we have something, say a fish tank, here's our fish tank. It's going to be filled with water, probably some fish swimming around in there. And someone asked you to measure this fish tank. There are a couple of options. You could find the area, you could find the perimeter, or you could find the volume. If someone asked you to find the perimeter of the top of this fish tank, you would measure around the outside edges. So the perimeter is just the outside edges of this fish tank. You would be finding how much space is around the fish tank. If someone asked you to find the area of part of a fish tank, you would find out how much space is being taken up. Say here at the bottom of the fish tank, how much space is on this floor here? What you are looking at is how much space is covered by a flat surface. So if you put this fish tank on a table, it would tell you how much space the bottom of this fish tank would cover. The last thing you can measure if you were measuring a fish tank is the volume, and that is how much this can hold. So that would be if you fill this whole thing entirely with water, all water, how much could this fish tank hold inside? And we're going to talk about the different times when you might need to measure the perimeter around something, the area, how much space it will cover, or the volume, how much it can hold inside the whole object. So on your notes, you have a sheet that says choosing units. So it's going to tell you the difference. Linear distance is measured with perimeter. You can think of fences when you think of that. So if you have your backyard, and here's your house, here's your backyard, you're going to put a fence around your backyard. The fence is just going to go around the edges of your backyard. You're not going to want fence inside your backyard. So when you think of perimeter around the edges, you're going to want to think of a fence. Now, the second thing that your notes is going to tell you is that you're going to measure that using regular units. You're going to call it inches or feet, yards or miles, millimeters, centimeters, meters, and kilometers. It's a straight line, so you're going to use regular units. Now, the second thing you might want to measure is area. And now for that, I want you to think of a rug. So you're going to put a rug on your floor, and the rug is going to cover up the nice carpet underneath your floor here. So you're going to figure out exactly how much of your carpet is being covered up by the rug. So that all this inside the rug would be the area. You can measure the perimeter, the outside of the rug, but really the rug is covering up an amount of floor on this flat surface. Now, unlike perimeter, you don't just measure in regular units. So when you're measuring how much something is covering, you're measuring how much something is covering this way, so you can make little stripes. And you're measuring how much it's covering this way. You're measuring how much it's taking up in two directions. See these little squares that I've made on my rug? Area is measured in square units because you're going to measure one direction and another direction. So if you were using inches, it would be inches squared. Notice how that's a 2 because you're measuring this way, and together it's making squares. You might want to measure in square yards, square millimeters, square miles. Okay. The last one we're going to talk about on your notes here is volume. Volume measures how much is filled up. Now for volume, we're going to measure in a different kind of unit. So let's say that I had a nice little box that I wanted to fill up here. I'm moving and I want to figure out how much stuff I can fit in my box. We're going to measure the length, one direction. We're going to measure the width, the other direction. And we're going to measure the height, a third direction. So for perimeter, we measured one thing. For area, we measured two things, but for volume, we're going to measure three different things. So we're going to call that cubic units. So if you're doing inches, you're going to do inches cubed. You're going to do yards cubed. You could do millimeters cubed because you're measuring the length, the width, and the height. So when you're measuring area, perimeter, and volume, you need to remember how many different directions you're measuring, and that's going to tell you what kind of units. You're going to use regular units, square units, or cubic units. Now, underneath, we have some situations. The distance around the playground blacktop. Well, if you're thinking about your playground blacktop, it looks like this, and you want to measure around. Let's say you were misbehaving and you had to run laps. You had to run around the blacktop. That is measured in a straight line, so that is perimeter, and you would measure it in regular units. I might say feet. Now, or if you're having a dinner party, your mom wants to cover the whole table with a tablecloth. That means it's going to cover the whole area. You're going to measure one way, and another way, you're going to make little squares. You might measure in feet. Squared. You're covering up the table. The last is water in a swimming pool. So if you have a swimming pool, and you want to know how much water can fit inside the pool, we're measuring width, length, and height. Three different things. So you might measure in cubic feet. Now, your homework also has this sheet. You should also glue this into your notebook. So you need to decide in each of these situations if you're supposed to measure perimeter, going around the edges, area, how much space is covered up, or volume, how much can fill up the object. And you'll see on the units, you have choices for regular units, square units, that would be with the 2, or cubic units, that would be with a 3. So remember, if it is perimeter, it is regular. If it is area, it is squared. And if it is volume, it is cubed. We're going to do a couple of these together, and then the rest you're going to have to finish and bring in and show your teacher tomorrow. So this says, the example is the length of a brick path around a square patio. Well, it's asking you about something being around, so you know that it's perimeter. And that would just be regular feet because you're going to measure in a straight line around. This one says the amount of paint needed to cover a tennis court. That word cover tells you it should be area. Oops, I'm sorry. The word is cover. And it tells you about area. Now for area, you're not just measuring one thing. You're measuring one direction and another direction, and you're making those little squares. So it should be square yards. I want you to do the rest of these on your own, and then come into school tomorrow and show your teacher. Good luck!